things cooling off a touch across northern Scotland and Northern Ireland, and a freshening breeze bringing a few showers here during Tuesday evening. Otherwise, things staying fine as we head into Wednesday, but that cold front will be kicking away the heat for a time. So temperatures Wednesday and Thursday still pretty warm and fine in the sunshine. This weather front will bring some rain across the north, but the high builds back and the temperatures could rise again this weekend.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Bev Turner. I'm back. We're going to get stuck into the issues that we should be looking at in depth. Nothing is off the table and no one will be cancelled for saying what they think. In fact, I insist upon it. Keeping me company today is writer and broadcaster Charlie Peters. And here's what's coming up on the show. The race to take over from Boris Johnson is well underway, with 11 Tory MPs currently in the running to be the next Prime Minister. The 1922 committee of backbench Tories are meeting later to decide the timetable of the race. And with many leadership rivals pledging to cut taxes as part of their plans, we'll be discussing whether they actually stack up from an economics point of view. And if you think it's hot now, the UK could get even hotter in the coming days. We're going to have the latest live from one of the Met Office's forecasters. That's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. But what do you want to talk about? Get in touch with me. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. But here, of course, are your very important news headlines.
A very good afternoon to you. It's just a couple of minutes past 2. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Now, in his first public appearance since he resigned as Prime Minister, Boris Johnson says he's determined to deliver the mandate he was elected on in his final few weeks. He said he won't endorse any candidate running to replace him. There are 11 in the race. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has become the latest senior cabinet minister to add her name to the list. The Prime Minister says throwing his weight behind one of the candidates could damage their chances.
My job is really just to oversee the process for the next few weeks, and I'm sure that the outcome will be good. And we just need to get on. And as I said, I think before to you, the more we focus on the people, on the people who elect us, on their jobs, their hopes, what they can get out of investment in science and technology. The more we talk about the future that we're trying to build, the less we talk about politics at Westminster. the generally happier we will all be.
Conservative MP Robert Jenrick told GB News that he's backing the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak.
Personally, I think it's best to focus on what that individual can really offer the country. And as I say, I think Rishi is the person of the greatest ability. He's an incredible hard worker. He's someone who has achieved enormous things already for the country. Front and centre will be the economy. And so choose the most economically literate person and the person that the public trust the most to deliver for them.
A timetable for the leadership contest is expected to be drawn up this week once the new 1922 executive has been voted in today. The group of backbenchers will then finalise the rules of the leadership contest. Well, they're meeting today to discuss changes that could limit the number of candidates who can run. They're also looking at the rules that govern a no-confidence vote. Now, it's something the Labour Party is pushing for in order for them to attempt to immediately remove Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Talking of labels, Sir Keir Starmer has announced that the party will focus the next election on growing the economy. In a speech this morning in Newcastle, Keir Starmer said Britain's dealing with a crumbling economy and deserves better. The Labour leader hit out at what he called the hypocrisy of those who served in the Prime Minister's government, saying they supported tax hikes despite being opposed to them all along.
Britain deserves better than this. We need a fresh start. We're not going to get that from a Conservative Party infected with the chaos virus caught from Boris Johnson. This is what I will do for Britain. And I will do it with a plan to tackle the three biggest issues that we face: rebooting our economy and ending the cost of living crisis.
In some other news now, the ex-Formula One boss, Bernie Ecclestone, is going to be charged with fraud by false representation. HMRC investigators say they believe they found more than £400 million worth of assets overseas that he failed to declare. The case will have its first hearing at the end of August. The president of Sri Lanka is going to resign after protesters stormed the capital over the weekend, demanding political reform. Tens of thousands of protesters bombarded the official homes of both the president and the prime minister over the weekend in the wake of the economic crisis hitting the country. The prime minister's office said the president would step down on Wednesday. The prime minister added he'd also resign to allow an all-party government to take over. Heathrow Airport has ordered airlines to cancel more than 60 flights scheduled for today because they couldn't handle the expected number of passengers. A spokesperson for the airport say they're expecting Terminals 3 and 5 to be busier than usual. They've warned holidaymakers they could cancel more flights this summer. Tens of thousands of people have already been affected by flight delays and cancellations over the past few months. Scientists have designed a new contraceptive to help limit the number of grey squirrels in the UK. The government says the method will be field tested soon. The plan involves trapping the squirrels in feeding boxes and spiking their food with birth control pills. The project's goal is to help protect ecosystems and native red squirrel populations. Today could be the hottest of the year so far in Britain. The Met Office has issued a heat health alert for parts of the UK as temperatures are predicted to hit 33 degrees. The alerts will stay in place until Friday. People are being asked to check on those who are vulnerable to extreme heat. This is GB News and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to We Need to Talk About.
Good afternoon, this is Bev Turner, keeping the seat warm for Alex today. Not that we need any more heat, either outside or in the Conservative leadership contest today. Things are hotting up, as Alan Partridge might say. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to bring you all the very latest in the next hour, because this will be a week in which the remaining 11 challengers will be sharpening their elbows, offering bribes and incentives to secure votes from colleagues, and some might speculate taking calls from Bill Gates and various unelected technocrats to find out what sort of global support they might expect once inside number 10. Perhaps. Because this leadership election will reverberate for decades. Never before have so many people been talking about growing their own vegetables simply because they're afraid of food shortages. Lots of ordinary people are fearing the worst right now because we've had decades of governments primarily focusing on being a player on the world stage. Argumentatively. 2 years of unnecessary daily fear, delivered by those we should be able to trust, has changed the mindset of this nation forever. We are worried and we need to feel secure in the knowledge that whoever gets the most powerful position in the country has our best interests at heart and a clear roadmap for Great Britain in this most turbulent of times. So let's get the latest from our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is here with us now. Hello, Darren.
Good afternoon.
Where have you been today?
Just down in Westminster. It is, you say, hotting up inside and out. So 11 candidates we've got now officially on the ballots. We're expecting voting to start on Wednesday, but interesting, we're going to get the rules this afternoon of how the process is going to play out. Meeting of the 1922 committee. Could we see a couple of more? Potentially. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, being talked about an awful lot, potentially going to run in this race. And even suggestions that Jacob Rees-Mogg might throw his hat into the ring.
What's wrong with them all?
As the continuity candidate, the man, of course, who's been incredibly loyal to Boris Johnson, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera over the last couple of months. But what we're starting to see is lots of these candidates lay out their policy positions, say what they would do in government. Naheem Zahawi, the Chancellor, is currently speaking in Westminster at the moment, talking about taxation, talking about trying to go back to sensible Thatcherite politics, while at the same time saying he would actually cut public spending quite significantly to try and raise money for tax cuts. And there's lots of suggestions of dirty trick campaigns as well, with kind of different groups leaking information and slagging each other off in order to kind of destroy other candidates. Interestingly, the Prime Minister today, though, as you may have well seen in the news, insisting he's not going to take part in any of this and let it play out, and he's not going to back any particular candidates.
Well, his logic was, I'm not going to back any particular candidates because I might ruin it for them. Which, it doesn't exactly sound genuine, or like he suddenly found his moral compass to do what's right after all of the shenanigans we've seen recently.
Well, I think in many ways, obviously, some candidates may not want it, others may well do, but I think when you're the current leader, you do have to kind of stay out of these things, as the Prime Minister realised. I think, hopefully, he was saying that somewhat in jest. I think what is fascinating is kind of two things. First of all, we're seeing this real divide at the moment, Bev, between kind of on taxation. This is clearly the totemic issue of this kind of leadership campaign. You've kind of got the Rishi Sunak camp who are saying, well, we cannot afford to cut taxes right now. It's simply not sensible economic policy. You've got quite a lot of candidates saying, no, this is my number one issue that I'm going to do, essentially, as Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, suggested on day one, is to look at tax cuts. And then you've got the other camp who are kind of somewhat in the middle saying, you know, we need to do this, but maybe just not right now. And I add to this, the other really interesting thing are going to be the rules of this contest. So the 1922 committee, it's the governing body of the Conservative Party, meeting later on today. It's going to be at what threshold, essentially, do you need to get in terms of MPs backing to get into the actual first round. Now, at the moment, there are only two candidates who publicly have the backing of more than 20 MPs, and they are Penny Mordaunt, the International Trade Minister, and Rishi Sunak. Now, clearly that will change in the days to come. Only half the party have declared who they will back. But when that contest starts on Wednesday, that's when we think the first round of voting is going to be. It will be fascinating to see how many of the currently 11 candidates, potentially 12, potentially 13, will actually make it into the first rounds.
Thank you, Darren. You're not going anywhere, are you? I'm sure you're desperate to get back out. Well, I mean, we might go. I'll let you go in a minute, but just hang on is what I'm saying. Don't dash off, because I want to bring in Charlie Peters. Charlie, how many of the current incumbents, I mean, you've said we're on 11 and we might get to 13 by the end of possibly today. How many of those realistically have any possibility, do you think?
Maybe 3 or 4. I mean, Liz Truss launching her campaign today said she wanted to deliver for the British people. Sounded like she was launching a job advert to work at Ocado, which was quite an interesting attempt. I think she's probably one of the most hopeful people who will have a late surge into the next round. But I mean, someone like Raymond Christie, who launched his campaign last night with a strange photo of him staring up in the clouds, I think he's unlikely to even have a chance of being included if he's remembered when they do the ballot this week.
Why then, Darren? Why do people like that? And even Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's got no chance. What is it? Just an attention-seeking stuff?
I mean, so there's always a kind of three camps in all of this. I would say, first of all, the people who think they can get it and genuinely have a proper chance of it. Liz Truss, a very good example. Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak. And others. Then there are those that are simply doing it to a large degree to raise their profile in the hope that they will secure a cabinet position, whoever ends up in government, that they can prove that they're at least reasonably popular with a section of the party.
Do they not understand we have no patience for that sort of
Well, you know,
nonsense
it's
right
the
now.
politics
Let
game.
people who are seriously in the running do the job.
And then you've got the kind of wild outsiders who, frankly, for whatever reason, and I do not know Raymond Christie's reason for doing this. I've just decided. I think you think about it like you think about it on election night when you get, you know, the main party candidate standing, you get the others ones on the fringe, and then you get the monster raving loony party. Now, I'm not suggesting Raymond Christie is the monster raving loony party in all of this, but yes, I think he has entered this race for his own reasons. Not sure what they are. His chances of winning, I would suggest, are close to zero. If anyone was thinking of putting a bet on them, I'd probably avoid that one.
OK, all right. Charlie, you're not going anywhere. Jury's out on you, Darren. You might have something more important to do. Right, we're going to talk now to Conservative MP for Southampton, Royston Smith. Hello, Royston. Where are you? You're over here. Are you there to join us now? Conservative MP, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Just your initial thoughts, first of all, please, on the runners and riders at this stage. Do you agree with our contributors here that we can probably narrow it down, even at this stage, to about 2 or 3?
Well, I think that's probably not an unreasonable thing to say. It's, I have to say, this whole thing is exhausting. There's no question about that. I've done this now 2 or 3 times. I didn't expect to have to do it so frequently. But it becomes, an all-consuming, whether you want it or whether you don't. You are just bombarded with candidates and their supporters, and it is never-ending. So it's not something I want to drag on too long, if I'm honest. But I think Darren and Charlie's assessment that in the end there'll be, 3 or 4 serious contenders is reasonably accurate.
So you're one of these MPs who is presumably being courted at the moment for your support. Give us an idea of what that is like and who's doing a good job of it.
Well, I'll tell you what it's like. It just goes on and on and on. And, you get some people who probably, no names, no pack drill. I wouldn't do that. They're my colleagues and, I respect them all hugely. But you'll have some people that, wouldn't know you if you walk down the corridor with them, who will send you a message saying, "Hi, Royston, it'd be great to catch up for a cup of tea." And then you have others that, I suppose, that do it better. They're slicker, maybe too slick. Some of them would suggest. I'm not saying any one candidate, but yeah, and then their people will come. Their supporters will come and they will text you and WhatsApp you and call you and email you. And as of this morning, they're now starting to turn up at the office door and ask if I'm in. So it's relentless. And in the end, I just feel like I need to go and hide for a bit.
I bet you do. I feel like I'm glad you're not hiding. I'm glad you're talking to us instead. But I feel like I want to go and lie down in a darkened room for a little while and let it all blow over. But I can't imagine what it must be like being an MP. And do you, at this stage, do personalities come into it for you, Royston? So what I'm saying is it those politicians, those MPs, those cabinet ministers who've ignored you for a long time, who suddenly want to be your new best friend? Does that come into the decision, or are you purely thinking, I want to support somebody who I believe is going to win the next general election? Because it's all very well to get through this point, but you guys have got to look further along than that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both, really, if I'm honest. When those people who you would walk past you in the street, but then claim to be your best chum, when they come, it's not lost on me that I have to look at them and think, well, how will my constituents warm to them? And if their instinct is that, people like me in the same party, in the same, organisation are relatively insignificant until they need something, and it sort of feeds into that thing that's what politicians are like. Now, they're not all like that. I don't mean that for a minute. But some of the people that are supporting some of the contestants, they wouldn't know me if they saw me walking down the road. So, that does happen. And for me, it is really simple. They have to be capable. They have to understand what the challenges facing us are. They have to be able to have a solution to the cost of living challenges that we face. But here's the thing which I find is fascinating, because we all know who's been involved in this and who wanted the PM to go and who thought they were better and they should be his successor. They need to be, or demonstrate to me and then to the members and then ultimately and most importantly to the country, how are they materially different to the one they seek to replace? And of course, the one they sought to replace, although I didn't vote for Boris Johnson last time, I voted for Jeremy Hunt at that stage. I've supported him because he's our Prime Minister, and I've supported him because he has a connection with my constituents. And the next one has to prove the same to me.
All right, thank you ever so much. That was Royston Smith there, MP for Southampton. We're going to be talking now to former editor of Labour List and friend of GB News, Peter Edwards. Hello, Peter.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you. Hello. So you were just listening there. So how are these candidates, Royston was saying, who is materially different to Boris Johnson? Which of the current 11, potentially 13, do you think is sufficiently different?
Well, I mean, obviously, I don't have faith in any of them as a Labour person, but I think they're marking themselves out as different in temperament, even though there might be continuity in terms of policy. So, for example, Liz Truss or Preeti Patel, if she stands, could be Boris continuity candidates. But I think because of the shame that Boris Johnson brought on himself, his party and his office, I think they'll all seek to carve out a very different niche in the way they communicate. But to be frank, I think Labour will have a lot to get stuck into, because a lot of the candidates, so we just heard an overview, have a very long track record. And I think it actually, to get as your Conservative focus today, I think it might be the backbenchers that pose more of a challenge for Labour to attack, because they're not implicated in some of the disastrous decisions of Boris Johnson.
Do you know what, Peter? I was interested to know what you think this weekend of Esther McVey coming out and saying that she would support Jeremy Hunt because she would win over the red wall next to Jeremy Hunt, who is considered to be very much Conservative. I don't quite know what she's basing that on. I don't know whether it's just if you have a northern accent, people presume that the Labour voter might find you an appealing option. What was your take on that potential pairing?
A little bit of a political marriage of convenience. And although I'm a southerner, I had many happy years living in Leeds, York and Carlisle. I think they're not on the same page. Jeremy Hunt was a Remainer who then, like Liz Truss, converted to Brexit, whereas Esther McVey was a Brexiteer. What's interesting is that other Prime Ministers did offer a role to Jeremy Hunt to come back, whereas Esther McVey had only a very brief post in the Cabinet and has been a little bit of a Marmite figure on the backbenches. So to me, that looks much more like realpolitik as Jeremy Hunt tries to deal with some of these issues around him being southern, quite affluent, and of the David Cameron era. And I actually think Conservative MPs who do the narrowing down in this process may see through that.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Royston Smith said he wants to go and escape to a room. Peter Edwards, it sounded a little like you've escaped to the bathroom during that conversation. So we are going to move on because it was a little bit echoey. But thanks. Good to see you as always. Now, joining me next is William Kediani, who is a political betting analyst, to take us through the latest runners and riders. William, good afternoon to you down outside House of Commons there. So come on, who is the horse? Who's the favourite at the moment?
At the moment, our favourite is Rishi Sunak at 13-8. He's been the big mover over the last week, and the defection or the non-running of Ben Wallace has put him right on top, along with, of course, over 30 endorsements.
Made the difference, William? Was it Ben Wallace, which I think a lot of us were surprised by, that Ben stepped out of the picture? Has that made a difference for Rishi Sunak to push him to the front of the field?
It has. At the time of Ben Wallace's withdrawal, just on Saturday morning, Sunak was his favourite, but he was more like a 3-1 shot with Star Sports rather than the 13-8 that he is now. Wallace was just behind at 4-1, and he had jumped up in that anti-post market because of his really good YouGov polling. So there's no doubt that he's left a big hole in the race, not only in terms of being the popular choice of the membership, which is what YouGov told us, but also in the sense that there are lots of MPs who would have supported him who are now up for grabs.
Who are the outliers, William? Who would you think would be a potentially good bet at the moment that may not automatically appear in the top 3?
I think that some people have noted Grant Chapp's very direct pitch towards MPs. Certainly, I think he was one of the Cabinet's better communicators during the Johnson premiership. He's 40-1. I think he's most interesting of the sort of bigger outsiders. There are sort of a few mid-range candidates. Kemi Badenoch was one of them, but yesterday's endorsements from Michael Gove in The Sun, no less, have seen her take a tumble in the markets. She's now a 14th shot. We've seen a drift on Jeremy Hunt and also... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, carry on, I interrupted you, go on.
No worries. We've seen a drift on Jeremy Hunt, and Tom Tugendhat is 11-1. I wouldn't say he's an outsider, but he's the shortest outside the big three of Sunak, Truss and Mordaunt. And he's fluctuated quite a bit, but it looks as if he's the most popular One Nation Tory candidate, if you can describe him as that, with Star Sports punters.
OK, all right, thank you very much. William Kediani there, political betting analyst for Star Sports bookmaker, down in Westminster, where you can hear the helicopters overhead. I'm sorry about that if you're listening on the radio. It doesn't make it easy at the moment. There's so much activity going on down there. I want to know your views. Email me, please, gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. Now, coming up for the rest of the show, there has been a lot of talk about tax cuts from the Tory leadership rivals, but do their plans stack up? We will be shedding light on all of that after this short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon, welcome back. You're here with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Now, to cut or not to cut taxes, that is the question that appears to be on the minds of every Tory leadership rival. Most of them have included tax pledges as part of their plans, but do they stack up? Now, Britain's national debt has grown 418% since 1995, far faster than its European neighbours. The first global financial crisis of 2008 hit the UK much harder than it did Europe, and it prompted huge borrowing. Then the lockdown policy saw a fall in government income, of course, as we customers spent less and earned less. And the government dished out £69 billion on furlough and in my opinion, criminal £37 billion on the NHS track and trace system. So Sunak & Co accounted for this shortfall by increasing borrowing to £323 billion in 2020-21. It sounds bad, But it's not actually all doom and gloom. Costs to service this debt are actually pretty low. In 2020, the UK paid an average interest rate of only 1.7% across all of its borrowings. That's really low, and that is down 7.1% in 1995. Half of British government debt is not due for repayment until after May 2030, years later than all the other major industrialised countries. So to reduce its debt burden, doesn't the UK government need to advance policies which stimulate economic growth while strategically trimming spending? And with the cost of finance so low, it has the breathing room to do that, doesn't it? Well, when you look at it like that, the debt mounting doesn't seem as insurmountable as it first appears. So joining me now to tell me if that's right or wrong is Christopher Snowdon, who's the head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Hello, Christopher.
Hello.
First of all, what is the head of lifestyle economics?
Oh, well, that's because I mainly write about the nanny state and issues around, gambling and drinking and smoking and so on.
Got it, all the fun stuff. So what would you make of my assessment there about the fact that even though we do have this enormous debt, it is actually quite serviceable at the moment? And perhaps what we should be looking at are some tax cuts in order to just help ordinary people.
It's roughly serviceable at the moment, but that is changing, and it will change as the index-linked debt rises as a result of inflation. These things go up and down depending on interest rates and inflation. Interest rates are going up, inflation's gone up, and the cost of borrowing, more borrowing is going up as well. Obviously, if you've got inflation at 9%, there's not many people going to lend you money at 1% or below, which is what we're kind of used to. But things have changed because of inflation. The inflation cat is out of the bag. Borrowing is no longer cheap. The idea that there's cheap money around is for the birds. And the Bank of England, quite rightly, has stopped printing money now. So, no, borrowing in the future is going to be more expensive. And 2030, you mentioned 2030, we have been borrowing on bonds that are quite long term, but 2030 will soon come around, and we will have to pay high interest eventually, even if we never pay back the debt. The thing to do, as you've already alluded to, is to have a lot of economic growth. But that is easier said than done. And none of these Tory leadership hopefuls have given us much of an idea how they plan to generate economic growth. Basically, you need to have low taxes and sensible but less regulation than we do now.
One of the things which I know is affecting so many businesses, you can just chat to people, even on an anecdotal level, Christopher, is the staff shortages. So people can't get employees to work in their businesses, and that's hitting productivity and profitability. Have you seen any candidates come out with any solutions of how we tackle that particular problem? And how do you tackle that problem?
Well, to be honest with you, what you need really is more immigration. Unemployment is at a pretty low level. It could be even lower, but it's surprisingly low considering what we've been through in the last 2 years. And we've got 1.3 million job vacancies. So the idea that you can just push everybody who's unemployed at the moment into these jobs, it's not going to happen because you require moving people around the country for one thing, which not everybody wants to do or can do, and you require skills to be aligned with vacancies. So I think the reality of it is actually we do need more immigration from wherever. We've got very high levels of immigration, but one of the success stories really is having such low unemployment, and we'll see whether we still do after the coming recession.
OK. All right, Christopher, thank you very much. Christopher Snowdon there, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Right, Charlie, back to you. Quite a lot's happened since I last spoke to you in this studio. Go on, react to what you've been hearing.
I don't think it's necessary to pump up immigration in order to deal with some of the productivity crises we're struggling with. I think that our heavily constrained housing policy restricts GDP growth by 10 to up to 20%. And a lot of that is around stamp duty. Now, one of the only good things about the coronavirus era, I think, is that we had stamp duty cut for an extended period so people could have a nice sort of tax rebate there. This would allow people to move more easily to where they want to live, where they want to work. So if those jobs remain unfulfilled, it's often because workers can't actually justify economically moving to those spaces. Getting rid of that problem That would free up a lot of productivity growth.
That is such a good point, because actually I'd forgotten about that stamp duty cut. Last year, March 2021, is when it came to an end, wasn't it?
Precisely.
And the one area that we've seen do incredibly well in the economy in the last year has been housing. The prices have rocketed.
Right, the prices have rocketed, and that means that so many young workers are struggling to move where they want to be, they want to have lives, and this impacts the whole economy. If people can't move where they want to be, they can't settle down, they can't have children, and this country doesn't have any workers.
OK, Charlie, don't go anywhere. Right, we're going to be talking hot weather, what really is a level 3 heat wave, but now it's time for a check on the news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 2:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson says he's determined to deliver the mandate he was elected on in his final few weeks as Prime Minister. He made the comment in his first public appearance since resigning as Conservative leader last week. There are now 11 candidates running to replace him. Well, Boris Johnson refused to throw his weight behind any of the candidates, saying it could damage their chances.
The job of the Prime Minister at this stage is to let the party decide, let them get on with it, and to continue delivering on the projects that we were elected to deliver.
Sir Keir Starmer has accused the Conservative leadership candidates of desperately trying to launder their integrity. In a speech in Newcastle, the Labour leader said Britain's dealing with a crumbling economy and deserves better. He also hit out at what he called the hypocrisy of those who served in the Prime Minister's government, saying they supported tax hikes despite being opposed to them all along.
Well, what we've seen this weekend from all the Tory candidates who want to be leader of their party is £200 billion of unfunded spending commitments. And my challenge to them is say precisely where that money is coming from. Is it going to be cut? If so, what's going to be cut? Because we need to know. Is it going to be borrowing? If so, where are you borrowing from? How much are you borrowing? Or is it just the magic money tree?
Ex-Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone is going to be charged with fraud by false representation. HMRC investigators say they believe they found more than £400 million worth of assets overseas that he failed to declare. The case will have its first hearing on the 22nd of August. Today could be the hottest of the year so far in Britain. The Met Office has issued a heat health alert for parts of the UK, as temperatures are predicted to hit 33 degrees this week. People are being asked to check on those vulnerable to extreme heat. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy $1.191. The pound will buy 1.183 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,458.31 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello, you're watching and listening to Bev Turner, sitting in for Alex Phillips this afternoon. Now, a really sad story. The appeal hearing to decide whether the life support system for 12-year-old Archie Battersbee should be continued is taking place today. Specialists at the Royal London Hospital think it is highly likely that Archie is dead, while his parents, Holly Dance and Paul Battersbee, disagree. Archie suffered brain damage after being found with a ligature over his head in April. So let's cross to GB News London reporter Alice Porter at the Royal Courts of Justice. Hello, Alex. What's the latest on this really heartbreaking story, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, just over an hour ago, we heard from both of Archie's parents who, for the first time in this quite drawn-out legal process, have both given evidence in court. And the focus of the discussion has really been today about the manner in which Archie would die. Should he have his ventilator switched off? That's what the hospital that have been looking after him, that's what they would argue. They were saying in that way his death could be planned, he could have his family surrounded by him, he wouldn't be dying with his sort of tubes all around him. But the family say that's not what they want. They were speaking out in court today, Holly Dance, the mother of Archie Battersbee, and she was saying that that's not, they want him to have a, and I quote, natural death. They don't want to have him die in a way that's planned. Now, Mr. Justice Hayden, who's the judge who's presiding over this hearing today, he put a scenario to both of Archie's parents and saying, you know, your son could die in chaotic circumstances. It could be really, really unimaginable. It could be in the dead of night. He could have heart failure. He may not have his family around them, and really sort of pitch them, is that really what you want? Would you not rather have something that was planned where you could all be together to say goodbyes and do it in a way that is of dignity for both the family but also for Archie as well? But both parents have very much refuted this. Holly Dance said she would be forever haunted by the idea of his ventilator being switched off, the ventilator that he is at the moment on, dependent to live, although his heart is very much still beating. So that's been the sort of focus of the discussions today. But it did before Holly Dance spoke in court today. Mr. Justice Hayden, he also asked a number of quite personal questions about who Archie is. He asked about his likes, his dislikes, his food interests, his gymnastics, and I think it was very much trying to get a sense for people who were there was lots of journalists really, is that there's a real person at the heart of this really, really tragic story, and I think it was something that came very much across to me, is that this is a real 12-year-old boy who likes to climb trees, who has friends, very much a loving family, and I think that was something that Mr. Justice Hayden was very keen to stress, I think, in court today. There was quite a few of Archie Battersbee's family and friends who are quite emotional in court. So although this has been something that we on GB News have been obviously following for a number of months now, it's been about just over 3 months since there was that the accident where Archie was found with ligature marks. Since then, this has obviously gone on for some time, but at the heart of this is a young boy in his life, and really today there's been a very difficult discussion about what happens, about when you end that life and the manner in which that should happen.
Thank you, Alice. Thanks ever so much. Alice Porter there at the Royal Courts of Justice. What a terrible, sad story. OK. Moving on, some news that broke in the last hour. Former Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone has been charged by the Crown Prosecution Service with fraud because he didn't declare his overseas assets, which are believed to be worth more than £400 million to the HMRC. So joining us now to talk about this is our Home Security Editor, Mark White. Hello, Mark. Some would say, given Bernie Ecclestone's incredible wealth for many, many decades, he's done well quite to get to this far in life and not having run into trouble with the HMRC. Is that Is that a bit mischievous of me to
well,
say
I think
that,
all
Mark?
I would say about Bernie Ecclestone is he's not had his troubles to seek of late. You remember, of course, that he made some very controversial comments about Vladimir Putin, which he just apologised for over the weekend. The latest setback is the HMRC, Her Majesty's Customs and Revenue, who have been investigating his tax affairs, and they believe that he has undeclared assets of some £400 million that they are now going to go after him for. A statement from Simon York, the Director of Fraud Investigation Service within HMRC, said, "We can confirm that a fraud by false representation charge has been authorised against Bernard Ecclestone," they call him. This follows a complex and worldwide criminal investigation by HMRC's Fraud Investigation Service. It goes on to say the criminal charge relates to projected tax liabilities arising from more than 400 million of offshore assets which were concealed from HMRC, according to the statement from Simon Jones. It also says HMRC is on the side of the honest taxpayer, nice to know, and we will take tough action wherever we suspect tax fraud. Our message is clear, no one is beyond our reach, even Bernie Ecclestone, who, as you say, has gone through a career of amassing great wealth and not come into any kind of issues with the taxman, but he has on this occasion. They are going after him, and next month he will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court here in West London in connection with those charges.
Would we expect any sort of statement from Bernie Ecclestone and his people?
We may well do. Nothing as yet. I'm sure that he is digesting the charges against him. His legal team are doing that. They may well say something or just wait to have their day in court. He did say something yesterday, but that was with regard to the comments that he made about Vladimir Putin when he said that he believed that he was, a top bloke effectively, and that he would take a bullet for him, and then stood by those claims when he was asked to retract them in various interviews. But the weekend he spoke to Sky Sports ahead of the Grand Prix, and he said that really his comments were not meant to suggest in any way that Ukraine and the Ukrainian people were responsible for what Vladimir Putin had done in launching this war, that it was an unjust war and was not the fault of the Ukrainian people. So an apology of sorts.
Well, he's not a man, Mark, is he, that's afraid of controversy, but this is the controversy he will not want, that he's admired now at this stage.
No, it could be a costly controversy, this one.
OK, all right, thank you very much, Mark. Now, a level 3 health heat alert. I wonder when we started issuing those. It's been issued for most of the South, the Midlands and the East of England as temperatures are soaring and set to last until the weekend. People have been heading to the beach, as you can see. Look at this. And it was a fabulous weekend, wasn't it? But the Met Office have been advising people to stay indoors and limit the amount of exposure that children have to the sun. Look at those pictures there. That was in Brighton. It looks fabulous. And while making sure that there's plenty of water nearby. So joining me now is Aidan McGivern. He's a meteorologist and weather forecaster at the Met Office. Hello, Aidan. It's nice to talk to you rather than just see you talking to the GB News viewers. For a change. First of all, can I ask you, do you have any idea, this might be a bit mean putting you on the spot like this, but when did the government start telling us to be careful in the heat? Because when did people get so stupid that they don't know to go inside if they're really, really hot?
I'm not sure when these heat health alerts started being issued, but what I would say is that we're not telling everyone to stay indoors. A lot of people are going to enjoy the hot spell that we're expecting over the next week or so. These heat alerts are pieces of advice issued to health professionals because we know that when we get prolonged hot spells in this country with way above average temperatures by day and by night over several days and nights, with little relief by night, for example, then there are health impacts. 999 calls go up, hospital admissions go up because the very old, the very young, babies and so on do get impacts from this kind of heat when it goes on for a long time.
Hey, that's good to know. That does make some sort of sense. I thought we really had reached peak health and safety insanity if people had to be told, please don't get too hot and pass out. But you're right, I guess to prepare the emergency services, that does make a lot of sense. What would you suggest, Aidan, that we can do in this immense heat? I came in the office this morning and some of the youngsters were going, I've barely slept, Bev. I had an hour's sleep because I was so hot in the night. So what can we do?
Yeah, and it is difficult, especially when the temperatures don't drop that far by night. So, for example, in some parts of the UK tonight, temperatures won't drop below 20 Celsius, and then another hot day is expected tomorrow in the south. Fortunately for those in the north, so for Northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, it will be cooler later this week before the heat builds across the UK this weekend, and some exceptionally high temperatures are likely on Sunday and Monday. In terms with this level of heat, well, the advice is to primarily look out for people who will be vulnerable to this kind of heat. So older people, young people, babies, people with underlying health issues. Close curtains on windows that face the sun during the day. Stay cool by drinking lots of water. Avoid excess levels of alcohol. Dress appropriately and avoid exercising during the peak of the heat. Those are all, I think, sensible pieces of advice that we could all try and stick by.
OK, Aidan, lovely to see you. Thank you so much there in your lovely short-sleeve shirt. Aidan McGivern there, our weatherman. Charlie, do you like the heat?
I love the heat.
I love it.
I live for it.
I don't need a warning to tell me to be careful.
No, precisely. And I think Aidan gave a very generous description of why the government issues these warnings with regards to the elderly and the sick. But, I mean, come on, we clearly go way too far with these warnings. I cringe every single time I'm on the tube and I hear the TfL announcer saying, remember to drink plenty of water. Like, come on.
We've all been infantilised, haven't we?
Entirely. I mean, we were talking about the nanny state earlier on in this show.
Yeah.
And is there any more nannying than telling me to have a sip of water from a little water bottle every time I go on public transport? It's obscene. It's absurd.
It is absolutely absurd.
If you can't trust your citizens to go outside when it's warm, what else can you trust them with?
I know. And what's your favourite way, then, to cool down?
Sleep. I can manage it. I don't know, all these people you're working with who are struggling to sleep. I hit the mattress, I'm out like a light. It's great.
You know, I think also, actually, the really good point that Aidan made is about don't drink too much alcohol in the sunshine. That is a terrible way of handling this weather. Fun, I know, but it's not good for you. I want to know your views. Are we making too much of a deal about the hot weather? Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews. You have been sending in your views throughout the show today. Thank you. Matthew has said, if Jeremy Hunt gets voted in, I will stop voting for Conservative. Penny Mordaunt for Prime Minister, please. Jill has said, I say, long live Boris. I don't think he should have been kicked out this easily. Oh, Jill, you can keep saying that, but he's gone, love. I'm so sorry. He's not long-lived. Ronald says, I believe Jacob Rees-Mogg is the only politician who can really take our country forward. Oh, come on, Ronald, you're joking. Most of the rest of the candidates are an absolute joke. And Suzanne says, why no coverage for the woman who's held the highest legal position in government, Suella Braverman? She'd be a superb MP. You know, Suzanne, I think, you know, there's not a lot... You're kind of right about that. Suella Braverman, Charlie, what do you think?
I think she's an incredibly impressive woman.
One
of the few, I'd say, actually Conservative ministers who's managed to pass through impressive legislation and effective legislation while in government.
Yeah, she's good. OK, right. An unpaid carer in North Yorkshire is petitioning for more financial assistance for the over 600,000 families dealing with dementia at home. Derek Brown has gained the backing of his local MP, Rishi Sunak, to push for a council tax discount for all carers. Anna Riley has the story.
Come on, just drink this.
Derek Brown looks after his wife Margaret, who's lived with dementia since 2018. And after a 3-year campaign, he's secured a petition in Parliament. It intends to help others with loved ones with dementia to secure council tax discounts as soon as they're diagnosed. It's something that could give a one-off benefit of hundreds up to thousands of pounds.
I'm fighting for 600,000 people in the UK who've got dementia, of living at home, and they've got next to no financial assistance. We're in the middle of a financial crisis where people are struggling to get day-to-day things. They're struggling. Like Margaret's got double incontinence. That means we have to wash twice and 3 times a day. The bedding's wet. Our clothes are wet. The electricity bill, you know, The energy bills, they're shooting up because more for that. We can't particularly go anywhere in the car, but if we do, that's costing us more. So it's costing at every single aspect of the financial crisis at the moment. It's time for the government to step in and say, look, we recognise the fact that we're saving the health service millions of pounds.
As well as the financial burden of being an unpaid carer, Derek has also had to bear the emotional toll of Margaret's condition.
It won't get better. There's only one way she's going, and that's the same as everybody else with dementia. It's a one-way ticket. There's no cure for dementia. I've lost Margaret mentally. I love her to bits. You know, there's nothing on this planet I wouldn't do to look after her. I love her to bits. But it's hard when you say to somebody, you're saying that you love them, and they're looking at you as if they don't know who you are.
Now all Derek can do is hope that his petition is passed in Parliament. Anna Riley, GB News, Northallerton.
Oh, Derek, what a superstar. Oh, that's heartbreaking. It makes me cry. People like that are just amazing, aren't they? I'm going to come to you, Charlie, because that was just so moving. That seems so obvious that we need to be helping more people like that.
Entirely. A kind of obliteratingly emotional piece there. Very sad. But taking the political context of this, of course, in 2017, Theresa May, when she was running for that first general election, got all sorts of trouble for proposing the so-called dementia tax.
Yes,
back
remember
then.
that, of course.
So if anyone had assets over £100,000, they have to pay for their own tax, often forcing people, like the two struggling people we've just heard, to sell their homes, move away from their family, to downsize, and to have to pay for their own care. Very sad, very stressful policy, I think, which caused a lot of trouble for Theresa May back then. And I think the Tories are now more aware of the fact they can't be running roughshod with people's lives in that way, especially when it comes to health and something completely unavoidable.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you were mentioning earlier about property and about, we were saying off air actually, that actually none of these candidates have got anything to say particularly about the housing crisis. Is that partly because, do you think, the Conservative grassroots, the base, are more elderly, they're more homeowners, and therefore it may not go down well with them to say that we need to make housing cheaper, more affordable?
I think that is true as a grave understatement. I think it's very strange, I think very revealing, that the only tax cut that Rishi Sunak is willing to promote is one for those aged, generally speaking, over 65, because he knows full well that's where the bulk of the Conservative Party's support comes from. And so if he supports tax cuts for the elderly, they'll probably get passed, they'll probably be supported. But generally speaking, the Conservative Party and chancellors and ministers like Rishi Sunak err on the side of caution when it comes to tax cuts and financial benefits for those under 65, even under 40, who perhaps, generally speaking, need it more. Even though those who are elderly, of course, require more social care, often are struck down by horrible illnesses such as dementia, they do, generally speaking, still have significantly more wealth than the young.
So much is changing in this story about the Conservative leadership. And it feels like in the last 24 hours, a bit over the weekend, that Rishi Sunak has had this massive bounce. We've heard it from our analyst and our betting expert with his figures today as well. How has he done that? Because there was also some bad coverage over the weekend of the clip of him saying about his friends.
Oh,
did you see?
Awful
I don't know whether you saw this. It's worth digging it out online, but there was an old clip of him saying, I do have friends, I have aristocratic friends, I have very ambitious, and I have some working class friends. Oh, no, I don't have working class friends.
Yeah, no, utterly risible stuff, really embarrassing. But that is, of course, the background he comes from. He enjoyed a fantastic education at Winchester College, and then moved on elsewhere into Stanford, California man. The reason why he has this extraordinary appeal is because much of the Conservative Party is not like the Conservative Party members who want that kind of low-tax person.
Charlie, I could chat to you all day. It's been a quick show. We're going to move on. We've come to the end of it, unfortunately. I will be back tomorrow morning with Mercy Maroki on To The Point. So have a wonderful afternoon. Darren is next with the briefing. But first, it is time for, you guessed it, the weather forecast, although I'm sure you can predict what's happening out there. See you tomorrow.
Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. Hot and sunny to start the week. Temperatures won't be as high through the middle of the week. However, there is the potential for temperatures to rise even further come the weekend. High pressure is dominating at the moment. It's bringing plenty of sunshine today, but this weather front is going to bring a change for some of us in the next 24 hours. Certainly the cloud increasing across northwest Scotland, a bit of rain edging in here through the evening and the breeze picking up. For most, it is a very warm summer's evening, and it's going to be a very warm night, a difficult night for sleeping. We will see this rain just spreading more widely across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but temperatures widely holding up in the mid to high teens, and parts of eastern England may not drop below 20 Celsius, so a very warm start to Tuesday. Will be a very different day through western Scotland, through the central belt, thick cloud, a little bit of rain here and there, and some of that rain for Northern Ireland too. For most of England and Wales, well, maybe a bit more cloud than today, thickening up at times, but generally lots of hot, hazy sunshine. Temperatures